We can see it now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining our 2020 virtual Juneteenth celebration. My name is Frances Maddox, and I, along with Elaine Hill, will be your moderators today. Our theme for the Juneteenth program is still We Rise. The Bloomington-Normal Black History Project, along with the McLean County Museum of History, is hosting this event. I want to also recognize our board members from the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project. The team, we all have been very much engaged to bring this event to you today. I'd like to recognize Arlene Jose. She is our project chair. Willie Holton Halbert, she's our program coordinator. Jeff Woodard, he is the director of marketing and community relations with the McLean County History Museum. Tony Jones, our operations chair. Elaine Hill is our oral history recorder, and I am the secretary for the board. You know, today we actually had planned to be at Miller Park to celebrate Juneteenth, but I will tell you one thing, not even a virus can stop us. We will continue to remember and commemorate this day, the ending of slavery. And we're thrilled that you have joined us today to celebrate Freedom Day. So Juneteenth is about our heritage, our past, as well as our present. It's our strength to overcome. It's our legacy, our history, and our many contributions as a people. And it's our commitment as a board to march toward progress and equality and to retain this history. A special thanks to the 100 Black men of Central Illinois. They have allowed us to use their Zoom platform, and we are very appreciative of that. So thank you. And before we proceed, I just want to go over a couple of Zoom protocols as well. So all participants should be muted. There is a chat window that's available, so if you have any type of questions or comments, or even if you have a technical issue, for example, you can't hear anymore, please use the chat feature. Our very own Tony Jones will be monitoring the chats and will respond to you. And if there is a technical issue, he will let one of the moderators know, or the presenter, so that we can work through to solve any type of issues. So with that, this is the outline for the program today. We have just a wonderful plan to share historical information with you. We hope that through this program today that you will receive education, you'll get to experience some wonderful talent. But I'm most excited about having Dr. Charles and Dr. Jeanne Morris to be our guest speakers today. I know that they're going to deliver as well as equip us with the knowledge as they speak to us about from then to now. But before we get started, we want to open up with prayer. So I would like to invite the Reverend D. Elliott Renfroe, the chaplain for Westminster Village, if you would open us up with prayer, please.
Thank you. Let us pray. Great and gracious God in heaven, we thank you that you are the creator of all things, the lover of the human race, and the provider of all that we have need of as a people. In this season where we find ourselves celebrating Juneteenth, we ask you, Lord, to guide us through this program, help us to be united and to celebrate the freedom that we have, not just through our nation, but through our love for you. And we ask you, God, in this virtual time that we would sense your tangible presence. And Lord, help us to be a people like Nehemiah records, a people who had the minds to work. And so, God, may we be who we are, wherever we are, because of who you are. We ask these things in the name of your Son. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Reverend. Well, in highlight of what's all going on in our world today with the social injustices and the loss of life, we also want to take the time to recognize and remember those that have passed on. And specifically, we want to honor George Floyd. So at this time, we're going to take 46 seconds and have a moment of silence to honor him today.
Thank you, everyone. At this time, we will have the Black National Anthem sang by Anaya Thompson. Hold on, sorry.
Lift every voice and sing till the cavalry ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing arise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the roaring sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day's begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stormy the road we trod, bitter the trust we ride, melting the days when all unborn had died. Yet with the steady beat of our weary feet, come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way with the tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughter. Oh, from the gloomy past, and now we stand at last, where the white gleam of a bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee. Lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadow beneath thy hand, may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land.
Thank you so much, Anaya. That was beautiful. Beautiful. At this time, we will have a presentation from our own chairperson, Arlene Jose, Bloomington-Normal Black History Project.
Good afternoon. Dr. Mildred Pratt and Dr. Stephanie Shaw of Illinois State University began to collaborate on conducting interviews of elderly African Americans in Bloomington-Normal. Over time, the group expanded. Their goal was to compile an authentic history of African Americans in McLean County since 1835, when Henry Clary and Rosanna Johnson reportedly settled in Bloomington. In 1982, the group became institutionalized and took on the title Bloomington-Normal Black History Project Culture Consortium. Thereafter, the group received funding from both Illinois Wesleyan through Dr. Pam Muirhead and Illinois State University through Dr. Mildred Pratt. The collection spans the 19th and 20th centuries, contains photographs, booklets, artifacts, portrait, and much more. In 1989, the project became affiliated with the McLean County Historical Society. Dr. Eugene Covington was the only Black medical professional to successfully practice in McLean County. Dr. Covington held an office at 313 North Main Street in Bloomington, where he served patients of both races until his death in 1929. He earned his medical degree from Howard University and was invited to become a member of the McLean County Medical Association shortly after establishing his practice in 1900. African Americans in McLean County had a lot of pride. They achieved their goals by virtue of strong entrepreneurial spirit and dignified work. They actively participated in politics, in church, and in service to others through agency and military. African Americans also became homeowners, and their homes reflected their culture and their pride in achieving success. Mr. Merlin Kennedy was a community civil rights trailblazer and icon. Mr. Kennedy became famous when his picture was featured in Jet magazine after walking the entire Twin Cities Christmas parade as the community's first Black Santa Claus in 1966, and in spite of the threat of arrest for doing so. Mr. Kennedy served as president of the Bloomington-Normal branch of the NAACP for many years. Mr. Kennedy served his community and his country well. In 2017, Jeff Woodard, Director of Marketing and Community Relations for McLean County Museum of History, contacted a number of community residents to discuss revitalizing the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project. Shortly thereafter, a group of individuals formed a new Bloomington-Normal Black History Project committee and began planning for its future. Bloomington-Normal Black History Project programs have included Resistance in Progress, 1960s to the present, 1960s to the present, capturing the past and present through oral history interviews. The Juneteenth 2019 program, Revitalized, and today's program for Juneteenth 2020, Still We Rise. If you would like to get involved with the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project, we are always in need of volunteers to help capture the oral histories and to assist with programs. Please contact Jeff Woodard, Director of Marketing and Community Relations, at 309-827-0428. We thank you, Bloomington-Normal, McLean County, and beyond, for supporting the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project. For more information about the project or to view the documented history online, and I recommend that you do that, please visit www.mchistory.org. In addition, please visit us and please visit the museum and also like the McLean County Museum of History Facebook page, and please follow us on Twitter. Thank you.
Thank you, Arlene. We really appreciate all that you do for the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project. At this time, we will have Mr. Jeff Woodard, Director of Marketing and Community Relations at the museum today, answering the question, What is Juneteenth? Jeff.
Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the nationally accredited, award-winning McLean County Museum of History, where we tell the story of all in McLean County. And also the repository for the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project, which is located on Museum Square in Bloomington, Illinois. And again, we would like to say thank you Arlene, and thank you to the committee for all the hard work in putting this together. Since the time people first occupied McLean County, conflict has been part of its history, and it still is. We are in the Community and Conflict exhibit curated by our staffer, curator Susan Hartzell, and we try to tell the stories of McLean County, all, as I mentioned. And this exhibit asks the question, who has the power? As Arlene talked about, the late civil rights giant Willie Kennedy, he wore the Santa suit. It sits behind me here. And he was barred from the parade for a simple act of nonviolent protest, gaining national attention. So what is Juneteenth? Juneteenth is a celebration. It's also a story of justice delayed. Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr. reminds us in his book, Stony the Road, Reconstruction, White Supremacy, and the Rise of Jim Crow, that Texas slaves only learned of emancipation 2.5 years late in 1865. And even then, slavery didn't end in Texas overnight. So Juneteenth is a celebration of hope. Texas finally recognized Juneteenth as a holiday in 1980. Just this week, New York's governor did the same. Blacks have celebrated this tradition for 125 years. The Bloomington-Normal Black History Project held its first observance locally here in 1993. Juneteenth is one of America's most important developments and one of the least known. It seems until this week, right? And thanks to you folks, the word is getting out. And we ask all of you to join us. I was asked to put together a couple of thoughts, and I penned something I'd like to share with you, if you give me a moment. Juneteenth, Freedom Day, Jubilee, was little known about, overshadowed by a failed Reconstruction and the so-called redemption period, which was a rise in supremacist ideology, and also the rise in McLean. The whole absurd notion that blacks were happier as slaves and less than human animals with no rights that whites would be bound to respect, a perpetuated myth. Today, a new generation, voices amplified by peaceful protests in the wake of violence against black bodies, is bringing new attention to slavery. The museum community wants to say, we see you and we hear you, and we will continue to examine and preserve the stories of our communities and cultures for the next generation in an effort to effect positive change. That's what good museums do. I sat down with McLean Kennedy a few months before he passed, and we talked about the struggle, and I asked him about the future. And he shared with me, and I quote, "The struggle for equality is not gonna be cheap," as he would say in his stern manner. "It's gonna be very expensive, but you can't give up." That's what he said. Juneteenth is an invitation to change for the better. And I'll leave you with an African proverb that's been shared in the museum community, it seems like every day this week. The African proverb says, to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Be kind, be safe. Happy Juneteenth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Thank you so much. I just want to do a quick reminder. If you're not participating in the program, could you please mute your mic so that the sound quality and you hear everything? Now we're going to move forward. At this time, we're getting ready to have a wonderful presentation by Bradley Ross Jackson, Emancipation Proclamation, read as he's going to be now, General Gordon Granger, 19th of June, 1865, Galveston, Texas. Bradley.
General Order Number 3, read by General Gordon Granger, 19th of June, 1865, Galveston, Texas. Hear ye the great news! The people are informed that in alignment with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free! This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection existed between them become that between employer and hired labor. The freed are advised to remain at their present homes and work for wages. They're informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts, and that they will not be supported in idleness either there or elsewhere. Once again, all slaves are free!
Thank you so very much, Bradley. Well done with that recitation. So next, I'd like to introduce you to Willie Holton Halbert. She is going to recite a very known poem written by Maya Angelou, which is fitting for our theme today, Still I Rise. Willie?
I can't breathe. I can't breathe. We are faced with two pandemics. One pandemic is actually the COVID-19, a coronavirus that affects our lungs where we are unable to breathe. The other pandemic is systematic racism that we deal with every day of our lives that tries to dehumanize who we are. Yet, Still I Rise by Maya Angelou. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may try me in the very dirt, but still, like dust, I rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? Cause I walk like I got oil wells pumping in my living room, just like moons and the suns with the certainty of the tides, just like hopes bringing high. Still I rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lower eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't take it awful hard, cause I laugh like I got gold mine digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your bitterness, but still like air, I rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the hut of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tides. Leaving behind nights in terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of a slave. I rise, I rise.
Thank you so much, Willie. That is one of my favorite poems, Love Still I Rise. Next on our program, I am so honored to be able to present to you our guest speakers. Dr. Charles Morris and Jeanne Morris are just wonderful people that have been part of our community for some time. Let me share a little bit about both of them, if you don't know them. Dr. Charles Morris, he attended Johnson C. Smith University, which is located in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that's where he earned his Bachelor of Science in Mathematics. From the University of Illinois, he earned both his master's degree and his doctorate in the College of Liberal Arts and Science. Dr. Morris also served as an associate professor as well as the vice president for administrative services at ISU. Now, Dr. Jeanne Morris, she began her academic career at Spelman College. She earned a Bachelor's of Art in Music Education and also earned her master's and her doctorate degree from the University of Illinois. She served as a professor at Illinois State University with 26 years as a faculty member in the Department of Early Childhood Education, and she also had a specialty in multicultural education. Doctors Charles and Jeanne Morris have 2 children, David and Lynn. They have 3 grandsons and 1 granddaughter, and they also have a great-granddaughter. Jeanne and Charles have been very active in our community, locally, at the state level, regionally, and even nationally. They've made many contributions promoting racial equity on campuses across the state. They've also received numerous awards for their diverse and their multi-level work in the community. And one of the recent awards in 2017, Charles and Jeanne were honored by the McLean County Museum of History as the McLean County History Makers. So I present to you Dr. Charles and Jeanne Morris as they share from then to now. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for the introduction, Francis.
You're welcome.
We are pleased, very much pleased to be included as participants in this event. I can remember when I was a boy participating in Juneteenth activities. I didn't know the full story at that time, but that has been corrected just this week. I had watched Juneteenth history, I think, for the last 2 or 3 days. And Jeanne and I decided or thought that we had agreed to talk about from then to now, intending to talk about Juneteenth from then primarily to now. But that's been done very well by what I've watched on national television, maybe international. And I've watched Brad do a good job here. Also, the poem, very much enjoyed. I enjoyed that by Willie. So we changed our topic and selected another topic, which is very much a topic of the moment. For us, that topic is systemic racism. Well, thanks to modern day technology, and for us, after 25 years of retirement, we're making our first joint presentation to a class of individuals, many of whom we may never see or meet. And we are pleased to have this opportunity. Virtually overnight, and as I meant to say earlier, especially during the last week, I have heard the complete story of Juneteenth. So I won't repeat that for you at this point. It would be somewhat redundant. So our topic, our focus of the moment is systemic racism, sometimes called structural racism or institutional racism. It's a condition which exists and thrives despite what some of our officials, high officials say, still thrives in America, having become established by white male supremacists when the Pilgrims arrived, and systematically and brutally banished Native Americans from their homeland. White male supremacists in America have used, and very much this year, systemic racism, have been built it into virtually every aspect of American life. Glenn Harris, president of Race Forward and publisher of Color Lines, defines systemic racism as the complex interaction of culture, policy, and institutions that hold in place the outcomes we see in our lives. Systemic racism is naming the process of white supremacy, says Harris. Further, he says the concept dates back to work done by scholar and civil rights pioneer W.E.B. Du Bois. The concept was first named during the civil rights movement of the 1960s and was further refined in the 1980s. System or structural racism makes it more challenging for people of color to participate in society and in the economy. A feature of structural racism is that it cannot be reduced to individual prejudice or to a single function of a single institution. Data show that today, a disproportionate number of people are homeless or lack housing security, in part due to the legacy of redlining, which I'll explain further later. Black people make up nearly half of the homeless population, while making up only 13 to 14% of the general population. The long-standing and persistent racial income, wealth gap, and housing insecurity prevents Black families from amassing and maintaining wealth in the same way that white families can. The net worth of a typical white family is nearly 10 times greater than that of a black family, according to the Federal Reserve's 2016 survey of consumer finances. It is institutional racism that keeps black people locked in dilapidated slum tenements, subject to the daily prey of exploitative slumlords, merchants, loan sharks, and discriminatory real estate agents. Persistent negative stereotypes fuel institutional racism and influence interpersonal relations. Numerous audit studies in the 1980s in the United States found consistent evidence of discrimination against African Americans and Hispanics in metropolitan housing markets. Vice President Pence and Larry Kudlow, who is director of the United States National Economic Council, tell the lie that systemic racism doesn't exist. And speaking of denying or lying, consider that one of the largest stoltest outdoor celebrations in the world is taking place today at Stonehenge in southwestern England, where the celebrators are being asked to stay at home and tune in online to stay safe from a virus that is a death threat to everyone around the world. However, thousands have been urged to come to an indoor event in Tulsa, Oklahoma, where the same threat of sickness or death will be even greater. Health experts predict that the number of deaths will increase as a result. Jeanne and I can cite experiences during our lifetimes, she will tell you about some of those, where systemic racism has affected our healthcare, our education, voting, and that's being very much affected now by gerrymandering that one of the political parties is pushing very hard. Housing, redlining, that's a feature in housing which refers to a system used by banks and the real estate industry to determine which neighborhoods would get loans to buy homes. Banks would then determine a neighborhood's risk for loan default and redline those at high risk of default, which tended to go to African Americans. Fortunately, and happily, many of those features are now no longer with us, but some of them are, and suppression of voting, suppression and oppression is very much one of those that is working now very much. I think now I'll ask Jeanne to join in and make some comments.
Thank you for sponsoring this. We're just absolutely delighted to be included. How powerful the sounds and compositions of recent protests have been across the country. It's just nothing like this has happened before. Locally, nationally, youth, seniors, whites, people of color. Because resistance to 400 years of racism, silent and conscious, the same critical issues, education, housing, health services, employment. The protests we see today resemble the characteristics of the Martin Luther King-led protests and marches, and are occurring throughout the country with the cry that racial injustice is a threat to all justice. And there is a growing recognition by the majority of this country, or many in that group, that racial injustice in any form is a threat to justice everywhere. Charles and I have spent many years with many others supporting the abolishment of the oppression of African Americans and championing freedom for all. Many here know our backgrounds. Charles was born and raised in Big Stone Gap, Virginia. Have you heard of that? It's in the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia. Coal mining country. What does that tell you about the opportunities for employment for African Americans? I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, the port of 40% of the slaves that were brought to this country, and where until very recently, a large tourist attraction was the old slave market. As natives of South Carolina and Virginia, we experienced the quotes, normal lives of Southern Blacks, segregated schooling and housing, minimal health care and unemployment. You know the list. Our grade and high schools and undergraduate college experiences were all in segregated but respectable institutions. Charles at Johnson C. Smith, and I at Spelman. And like many other Southern Blacks, we wanted more. We wanted to, and were encouraged to seek, find, and feel the warmth of other suns. The migration of African Americans to Northern and Western America. After a year of marriage, living in High Point, North Carolina, we moved to pursue higher education at the University of Illinois, only to learn that there was no housing on campus for African American students. That issue was solved when the National Science Foundation, from which Charles received the scholarship, bought a block of housing and put all of its students in that. That competition of completion of Charles's studies at the UI, we moved to Bloomington-Normal, the same housing problem, but buttressed by some locals, black and white. We found a house, even though the rumor was the NAACP had sent us to purchase the house and to trash it to run the neighborhood down. How racist is that? But there were Grace and Floyd Bonds, Francis's parents. Francis, they would be proud of you today, and we are proud of you and all your family. Other Bloomington residents came to our rescue. Ralph Smith, Vernon Pullman, Carol Bell Washington, Henry Brown, Merlin Kennedy, Eva Jones, the Gastons, the Garrisons, Richard Watts, Bob Lenz, the list goes on. And we're here today, and we've tried to give back to the generations coming after us. How do we rise? Like, we rise because of meetings like this. How races lived in America, white fragility, and the new Jim Crow, Trail of Tears, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, the warmth of other suns, the miseducation of the American Negro, among the books that we have listed in the library at Westminster, where we are now staying. We are honored to have walked with so many, to have celebrated with you today. We are thankful for those assembled here today, and will be honored to walk and celebrate with you and to sing, "We Shall Overcome."
We want to share with you some of the artwork that some of it had for more than 50 years, through the years. And you can see behind me one print with a man carrying a signboard. It has a lot of features and information about the civil rights era of the 50s and 60s. The one that's next to that, and which you can now see, the chair, is called, thank you, Stars and Bars. These are constant reminders to us as we don't keep the large prints now, but we have them available to us of the lives that we've lived, good times and bad times. This is a picture, if you can see that, a print, which is a print of the 2020s. It was done or provided and made available by an organization in the state of Mississippi, where you probably know that the incarceration of African Americans is frightfully and unjustly high. These are our comments. We're pleased to have had the opportunity, and thank you again for inviting us.
We shall overcome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Morris, Dr. Charles and Jeanne Morris, for sharing these experiences, your knowledge with us. A lot of great information about our past, but we've got great opportunities with our present, and I hope this encourages everyone to commit to the march toward progress as well as equality. It's more important than ever. It's always been important, but this is the time now to make a change, and we've been encouraged by your words. So thank you so much for sharing with us today, and especially those portraits. Those touched my heart as well. So. Well, the next item that we do have on our agenda is a presentation by the 100 Black Men. We have Justin Hicks with us. He is the organization's public relations contact, and he's going to share a few statements with us about their role. And I also want to just another shout out to them to thank them for supporting the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project in our work, and also providing the Zoom platform. So, Justin?
Thank you, Francis. I'm really blessed and fortunate to be here today, and I wanted to start off by first saying thank you to several people. Thank you to Dr. and Mrs. Morris for that presentation. I was just telling my wife recently about how I wanted to reach out to some of my family members who are my senior, that have experienced a lot of different types of racism that I haven't seen, even more overt things like that. And just to kind of hear their experience firsthand, because I don't know that we always do that enough in people of my generation. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to do that today and sharing those words, sharing your story and the artwork. I also wanted to thank, again, you, Francis, and Ms. Willie, Holton, Halbert, and everybody affiliated with the McLean County Museum of History and the Black History Project. Thank you for putting on this presentation today, and all the other presenters that have done a great job. So yeah, my name is Justin Hicks. I'm with the 100 Black Men of Central Illinois. I've been a member for about 5 years. For those of you who are not as familiar with the 100, we started as a national organization back in 1963 in New York. And we were just trying to implement programs that would enhance the lives of Black people and minorities, essentially. And eventually that platform grew, and we ended up expanding. And at this point, we have over 100 chapters across the nation, and even there are other chapters that are overseas as well. And we've had our chapter here in Central Illinois since December of 2003. And so I'm very proud to have been a part of our chapter here. Our motto is, what they'll see is what they'll be. And it's a pretty straightforward motto, right? Essentially, we know that there seems to be a deficit in some instances of Black role models, in particular for our young Black men. And we have a group of dedicated Black men in Central Illinois that have time and energy to make the lives of our young people around us better, trying to impart what wisdom we have on them, sharing knowledge on areas and subjects that maybe they don't know about in school levels. So we've been doing that for some time, and a mentor in the past, and I've been serving as the public relations chair for the last couple of years. And we kind of rest on 4 pillars, which are empowerment, health and wellness, mentoring, and education. Those are kind of the basis for all of our curriculum, all of our programming. We have our annual gala every summer. We have a health and wellness breakfast each year, and then we also have our mentoring with our mentees from Central Illinois that has been going on for quite a few years now. So a big shout out to all of our mentors that have been a part of that process. Thank you. Maddox, our president, about almost a week after the Floyd incident took place, and just because I wanted to talk to him and maybe collaborate on what kind of our reaction was and what thoughts they were out there about that. And so we did release a statement kind of speaking to that the week after the murder. We spoke about
silence.
A little bit about what it is that we were doing within our chapter and within the community here in Central Illinois. We indicated that we're in support of all of the peaceful protests that are happening across our nation and have grown to taking place across the world. But in addition to that, we just wanted to indicate that, we're going to lean on those pillars that I referenced in order to help educate our young people and keep them out of harm's way. Ultimately, whenever any of our young Black men of our community are stopped by the police, our goal is always to get them home safely. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case for Mr. Floyd. That wasn't the case for Mr. Brooks in Atlanta, and so many countless others. And so, to prevent more tragedies, it starts with a small group, and then hopefully it can kind of expand from there. And so, we touched on that. We touched a little bit about how we are continuing to collaborate with our local law enforcement. We have had speakers from the Bloomington and Normal Police Departments come in and talk to our mentees. which are typically high school age students, but in some cases middle-aged students. We've had them come in and give presentations to our students to help build a more of a relationship there. For the police officers, I think it helps kind of humanize us a little bit, because sometimes they don't always see us that way, unfortunately. But you know, we wanted to try to make sure that we're doing that in some way. And for our mentees, it gives them some exposure to law enforcement, but in a safe place, so that maybe they don't always have a negative reaction to every single thing that involves that. Whenever they have an interaction with them, it's not always perceived as negative. And that isn't to say that that isn't to say that law enforcement has to befriend young people of color in order to not murder them in cold blood. That's not the statement there, but I do think that there's value in trying to bridge that relationship nonetheless. And so we called attention to that. And, you know, we're going to continue to lean on those pillars and have dialogue with our young people about how to conduct themselves when stopped by law enforcement, and just overall, like I said before, just teaching them things that maybe they wouldn't ordinarily get in their typical studies in school. So we talk about racism, we talk about Black history extensively throughout the month of February. We do have special sessions that are dedicated towards Dr. King and learning about his studies beyond just the couple of quotes that people typically hear from the I Have a Dream speech. We kind of dive deeper than that. And so we're going to continue to do those things and monitor how our young people are behaving when they are just as they continue to develop as young men, but also as they interact with law enforcement, because, you know, we know that those situations can be very tenuous and they don't always go the way that they ought to. So that talks a little bit about what we do in the classroom. Typically, of late, we have had virtual sessions, continuing virtual mentoring sessions throughout the pandemic, as that has kind of shut things down for our ability to meet with our students in person. But we have found opportunities to do that online, and even into the summer. We typically wrap up around the third week of May with our program, but we've extended it into the summer, and we've had recent conversations about George Floyd, about qualified immunity, and how they feel about Colin Kaepernick, how they feel about the protests. And we've connected that back to the protests that we've seen from the 1960s and even the 1990s after the Rodney King incident. And we're really trying to let the students drive the conversation as much as they would like. And they're kind of dictating where we go, but our mentors are right there to kind of help them see things that maybe they don't yet have the life experience to see or understand yet. And so we're hoping to try to make change in our community as best we can. And we're doing everything that we can do in order to do that. We appreciate everybody's support in the community. I know that I personally believe that, you know, the change starts here in the heart first, right? And from there, it kind of expands to, you know, what you're teaching in the home to your loved ones. And from beyond, you can take it outside the home, and then we talk about how we impact the world, right? But it starts within first. I have two little ones myself. My children are very young, and you know, I'm trying to understand the pace in which I introduce them to things like topics of racism, which they may not be familiar with just yet because they are so young, but that they will need to learn about as they get older, much like my parents taught me. And you know, there's different things that we're doing to try to stay involved and stay committed to the cause and the process. You know, I attended a rally, a march myself on June 2nd that started at the City of Refuge and went to the Justice Center. We've signed a petition to arrest the killers of Breonna Taylor. We've donated to her legal defense cause as well. And we've been more cognizant. We were always aware of this in my household, but we've been more cognizant about how we invest our money with other Black-owned businesses, and trying to be more aware of where our money goes, and trying to understand that that wealth in a lot of respects has a lot of influence on the power and control of kind of what we're able to do. And in addition to that, voting, the importance of voting is something else that we stress in our household and with those around us and with our mentees as well. And so, and then my involvement in 100 and attending great events like this. I think these are all things that individuals just, you know, as an individual, people can do. These are things that they can do, but they have a greater impact in the long run. I know that I was pleased to see that there are many white people on the call today and in the presentation today. So thank you for coming, and we need people like you to help spread this message and to carry this forward with your loved ones and with the people within your household and the people within your inner circle, because that's the only way that we're really gonna see real change in this cause. And so thank you for my time today. I appreciate you guys letting me take a few minutes to speak about the 100 and what we're doing. And I just look forward to having a great rest of the weekend. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers that are on the call. And I'm saying on the call like I'm at work. I'm sorry, I'm a little pessimistic. But happy Father's Day to everyone. And I enjoyed Juneteenth yesterday, and I hope all of you did as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We're so appreciative of the 100 Black men and all that they've done. You really make this possible for us, and we really, really do appreciate that. Thank you so, so much. At this time, we are getting ready to be blessed with Reverend David Wayne Brown with an excerpt, just an excerpt from Dr. Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream. He is the proud pastor of New Hope Missionary Baptist Church. Everyone, Reverend David Wayne Brown.
First and foremost, thank you all for having me on today. Let me begin. I am happy to join you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro is still not free. 100 years later, the life of a Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. 100 years later, the Negro is still languished in the corners of American society and finds himself exiled in his own land. And so we've come here today to dramatize a shameful condition. We've also come to this hollow spot to remind America of the fierce urgency of now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or take the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real the promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from that dark and desolate valley of segregation into the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of the moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963 is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hoped that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if this nation returns to business as usual. There will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted its citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until that bright day of justice emerges. Let us not wallow in the valley of despair. I say to you today, my friends, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will one day be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live where they're not judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with this vicious racist, with the governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day, right there in Alabama, the little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls and sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Yes. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places be made plain, the crooked places to be made straight, and the glory of the Lord will be revealed that all flesh can see it together. This is our hope, and this is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of a mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling scars of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. And with this faith, we will be able to one day have all of God's children be able to sing with a new meaning. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring. And if America is going to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prestigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the high Alleghanies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from the Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And when this happens, and when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, thank God Almighty, we're free at last.
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, Reverend Brown. Thank you so much. We appreciate that presentation. We appreciate you reciting that. Some of us were alive when those words were stated, and we thank you for that. We're going to move forward now. We have some announcements, and I saw that there may be a brief change, so I'm going to allow our chairperson, Ms. Willie Holton Halbert, to take it on from here.
Thank you so much. We appreciate that. We will do the COVID-19 update, and after that will be followed by a presentation from Bradley. Once again, he's going to do the actual Emancipation Proclamation that was signed by Abraham Lincoln. We do not want to miss that. But right now, let me go ahead and give you the update for COVID-19. This is such a critical issue. We know we're in the midst of a pandemic, and it is so important that we all are informed with the correct information. We want to give you some stats just so you can know where we are in McLean County right now. Right now, we have, as of yesterday, 245 confirmed cases. There's been 13 deaths, and there has been 0 hospitalized right now. And we also have recovered 219. In home and isolation, we have 13. Now, we want you to be aware of the racial disparity that we're dealing with right here in McLean County. African Americans make up approximately 8% of our population. However, confirmed cases, we had 68 Blacks that are confirmed, which is representative of 27%. That is down from the original, we were in the 30s, we're down to the 27%. But as you can see, this is more than double our population. With the white population, we had 153, Hispanics 29. So we're concerned about our vulnerable population. And as African Americans, we really want to make sure that you're empowered and that you know what is going on within our community and that we all take an active role. We want you to know that there's a testing site that is available and it's free. It doesn't cost us anything. Anyone can go up to the McLean County Fairgrounds located at 1106 Interstate Drive in Bloomington from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. daily for people in vehicles or pedestrians. In addition, we have increased the Connect Transit offers a shuttle service for testing sites from the Walmart location on West Market. The shuttle runs from the site every 15 minutes from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. and from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. No appointment is necessary. It doesn't cost you anything, but more importantly, we want to control this virus and we want to eliminate that. We want to help save lives. So some things that we can do to make sure that this is done is, if possible, when you go to the store, instead of both parents going, just one parent goes and leave the children at home. And we do know in single parents that may not be possible, but as much as you can control that, we ask that we all do that. In addition, if you're 2 years or older, we ask that everyone, when you go out in the public, please wear a mask and social distance at least 6 feet difference. Actually, too, we want to make note that if you have participated in a social gathering with large crowds of people, if you've marched, they're requesting, the McLean County Health Department is requesting that you please go have a test done. And even though you test and your test comes out negative, remember that later on you can still test and the test will be could be positive. So that's why it is so important for us to practice social distancing and wearing a mask. When you wear a mask, you say that you want to protect others, and when they wear a mask, they protect you. We all want to be conscious, because what I do may affect my mother, my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, my next door neighbor. We want to care about one another, and we want to help save lives. And all the studies have indicated that masks do save lives. So please, we ask that you do that. Also, if you don't have masks, and if that's an issue, you can contact me and we can make available some masks to you. You can call me direct. My phone number is 309-287-1954. The key thing that we want to stress to everyone, that wash your hands as much as you can, use sanitizers. Even when you're traveling, take a small thing of sanitizer with you. When you go into the grocery stores, when you touch items, use sanitizers. This will help protect you. We want to make sure that you're safe. In addition, we have noted a trend that people in their 20s are testing positive. So some people think, well, I don't have any risk because I'm young, but we want to make sure low risk is still a risk. So please, everyone, be aware, care about one another, and together we all can make a difference. Thank you all. And with that, if you will allow me to, I would like to go ahead and introduce Bradley Jackson, who's going to do the other part of the Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln.
The Emancipation Proclamation by President Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States of America. That on the first day of January AD 1863, all persons held as slaves within any state or designated part of a state shall be thenceforward and forever free. And the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authority thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of such persons, and will do no act to repress such persons in any efforts they may make for their actual freedom. That the executive will on the first day of January, by proclamation, designate the states and parts of states, that the people thereof shall on that day be in good faith represented in the Congress of the United States by members chosen. He deemed conclusive evidence that such states and the people thereof are not in rebellion against the United States. Now, therefore I, Abraham Lincoln, President of the United States, by virtue of the power invested in me as Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy of the United States, do on this first day of January AD 1863 publicly proclaimed for the full period of 100 days from the first day above mentioned, order and designate and declare that all persons held as slaves within said designated states and parts of states are henceforth and shall be free, and that the executive government of the United States, including the military and naval authorities thereof, will recognize and maintain the freedom of said persons. And I hereby enjoin upon the people so declared to be free to abstain from all violence, unless in necessary self-defense. And I recommend to them that, in all cases when allowed, they labor faithfully for reasonable wages. And upon this act, sincerely believed to be an act of justice, warranted by the Constitution upon military necessity, I invoke the considerate judgment of mankind and the gracious favor of Almighty God.
All right, Bradley, thank you so much. I love the beard. You look just like him. Thank you so much. Just in a beautiful color. All right, we're going to get back to our announcements. And right now, we're going to hear from the president of the NAACP, Miss Linda Foster. Linda? Linda, are you there? Are you muted?
Okay, here we go. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry about that. Thank you for this opportunity. I am enthralled in what's been said today. Everyone that's been on program, to the Morrises. Every time I hear them, I'm learning much more about not only about this community, but about this land. And for everyone else, Reverend Brown and 100 Black Men, Bradley, and Naya, just everybody, all the committee members, the Black History Project, McLean County History Museum, for pulling this together. I tell you, I'm bringing greetings from the NAACP. And we've been the oldest and the baddest civil rights organization since 1909. NAACP has been in this community since 1918. So it was soon after that race riot that happened in Springfield that we formed a branch here. There was needed. It was needed because of what was going on. Our mission is to eradicate racism and discrimination. And I know that the conversation today is more of a history opportunity to find out what has happened in the past, then and now, but I'm looking more forward to my tomorrows because what has happened in the past. So all them freedom fighters out there, we thank you. We thank you for doing what you have done. It is for the best of people to be able to be in harmony and to have equality for all. I know I have just a few minutes to talk about the Census 2020, which is very important. Your voice matters. You know, for African Americans, LGBTQ communities, children and young, Native American community, Latinos community. The census is more than just a head count. It provides a picture of our nation, our community to help determine how we build our schools, our hospitals, and our businesses. In essence, is how our federal funds are distributed. When we fill out the census form, we are now saying that we want to be part of that decision-making level at all levels of government. We want to be involved in the funding of schools, hospitals, and social services, and bringing employment opportunities to our community. Nearly every household will receive an invitation to participate in a 2020 census. Now till October 31st of 2020, please make sure that you do that. You can do it online, by mail, or by phone. Don't let us be undercounted this time. Let's speak for veterans, minority community, retirees, colleges, farms, and the homeless, etc. Every 10 years, this is determined. It's made of how much funding our community will receive. It's the law to give you an opportunity to fill out the form, and it's the law for you to return it. It only takes less than 10 minutes to fill out. Make your return census count, and it's confidential. Remember, anyone living in your home as of April 1st, 2020, count everyone. And as I move on to talk about voter registration, which is equally important, and is another right that we have, your vote matters. Why vote? All of this history that we've been talking about today, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is a significant piece of legislation that guarantees the right to African American citizens. The Legislative Act prevented states from enforcing discriminatory tactics aimed at preventing African Americans from opportunities to participate in the voting process. There was a point in time when African Americans were not allowed to vote, and women. And then it was even more prevalent in the South. We need this act to close the loop of discrimination. Who can vote? Citizens of the United States. Anyone 18 years or before the next general election. When do you vote? Upcoming national election will be held November 3rd, 2020. You can register online, you can register by mail, and you can register in person. Acceptable IDs will be a driver license, social security card, birth certificate, utility bills, and so on. Under attack, healthcare, higher education, climate control, housing, child welfare, law enforcement jobs, and other reforms. Voting changed neighborhoods and community. Voting affects real change in the economy. We vote for our children's welfare. We make impact when we vote in numbers. Our vote is our voice to government. It's your duty, it's your right. And P.S., don't believe the hype about felonies not being able to vote. You are not, if you are not incarcerated, regardless of your criminal history, if you have not been, and if you have not been convicted while in custody, you can vote. So get informed get educated, and vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Linda Foster. We appreciate that. We will turn the remainder of the last 5 minutes of this program over to our chairperson. But before we do that, we will recognize our sponsors on today. Platinum, Mr. Willie Brown. Gold, the NAACP. The 100 Black Men, Not in Our Town, WXRJ, and then members from the board. Silver, Moms Demand Action, and Zeta Phi Beta. At this time, I want to thank you all for listening on today, and I turn this over to our chairperson, Arlene Jose.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I would like to begin with thanking our keynote speakers, Dr. Charles and Dr. Jeanne Morris. You are the reason why the Black History Project exists and why it needs to continue. The life that you live and have lived needs to be part of the story of Bloomington-Normal, McLean County. Thank you for sharing today the words, the wisdom, and the wealth of history. Thank you to Anaya Thompson, to Bradley Ross Jackson, who is a Reverend Jesse Jackson Push Oratorical Excel Leader. In addition, I want to thank our volunteers. I want to thank our partners, 100 Black Men, NAACP, and the McLean County Museum of History. I want to thank our ministers and to everyone who has assisted in any way to make today happen. I had words that I thought I was going to speak, but the Spirit has moved me. So now to my community, a brief message. Many of you may not be aware that Bloomington-Normal, McLean County started observing Juneteenth in the early 1990s. A group of very committed individuals, Bloomington-Normal Black History Month, Dr. Pratt and others, said we must have the most important historical event in Black history recognized and celebrated in our community. They did that with Juneteenth. We had Juneteenth annually. And as things happen, people move away, funding dries up. Juneteenth ended. And then years later, another group of individuals came forth and said, we need to have Juneteenth in our community. Again, they got volunteers, they found a location, they got Juneteenth started again, they found sponsors for donations. But again, people moved away, funding may have dried up, and Juneteenth did not happen. Then in 2019, the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project reclaimed Juneteenth. To our community, we can no longer start and stop Juneteenth. We need Juneteenth to be woven into the fabric of Bloomington-Normal McLean County. I am asking each resident of this community, to our leaders, to those who are empowered to make difference in this community, to our corporations, to our universities, to our educators, to each and every person, it is time for Juneteenth to be with us annually. When this committee is not sitting at the table and there's someone else at the table, Juneteenth needs to be there. I invite you to contact Jeff Woodard at 309-827-0428 to sit at the table with us, to plan Juneteenth with us, to figure out how we're going to fund it, to figure out how we get volunteers. We need to own Bloomington-Normal's Juneteenth celebration from here on out, so that the children today will be sitting at the table planning the next Juneteenth event for their children. In addition, the same thing with the Bloomington-Normal Black History Project. It is clear that voices need to be heard, and we do that through capturing oral stories. We need volunteers, we need donations, we need support. Please join us in making sure Independence Day for Black Americans, Juneteenth, is solidified in our community, and the Black History Project lives on forever. At this time, let me close with saying I truly appreciate the dedication and the commitment of the committee, the Black History Committee that's now at the table. I want to thank the museum staff for being a partner forever with us, and Susan Hartzell, the curator at the museum, who has helped with training. Lastly, save the date. Bloomington-Normal, McLean County will have an Independence Day for Black Americans celebration on June 19th, 2021. Juneteenth 2021 will be commemorated and celebrated. Now, to close us out, I will ask Reverend Brown to close us in prayer. And thank you for being here, community, close and far. You helped us remember and celebrate. Reverend Brown?
Let us pray. Father God, we thank you. Thank you, God, for allowing us to come together and celebrate what you did for the Black community, for Black folk in general, Lord. Thank you for allowing us, after all we've been through, to be set free. Thank you, God. And even though, God, you've done so much for us, we know that you're still going to take care of us along the way. Thank you for this, everyone who's on this committee. Thank you, God, for the spirit in which it was done in. Now, Lord, we just lift this entire country up to you, knowing, God, that it's not by might, not by power, but God, by your spirit, that things are going to be okay. Lord, we glorify you. We praise you. And in spite of this pandemic situation, we still lift up holy hands and give you praise, looking forward that when we can all get back together into your house and glorify you and praise you and continue to thank you for all that you've done. Now, God, we just ask for this city, Bloomington-Normal, that you allow, God, that this June 19th will be celebrated in a mighty way to recognize what you have done for your people. Lord, we just thank you, we praise you, we glorify you. In Jesus' mighty name we pray, amen.
Amen.
So thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We hope that you know that we came from a place of love. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you.
Great job, everyone.